Uh-oh, we're going to get some attention eventually. We get a warm welcome, I hope. Good morning. Good morning.
Got that special music.
Special music just for John. Well, you guys, this is a lot of fun for me. I've had the pleasure of being part of the Pioneer Summit now a couple of years. But I really had a good time last night. And I'm not just saying it because he's here. I got a chance to really talk to John for the first time. So for those of you who have not gotten to know John at all yet, be a good conversation a little bit about his career. You get to hear more. John, I was asking you last night about how you became a consultant, because that's not always the most obvious career choice, or was it for you?
Well, the operative choice I made back then as a college senior was a choice I've made repeatedly in my life that has served me well, which is I followed my wife.
Good advice.
True story. And anyone here that's met my wife, Ron certainly has, knows who's boss in my house. We were college seniors, and I had been accepted to business school, so I had to get a job for a couple of years. She was applying to grad school in New York and in Boston. And so I went and got a job in each, got a job at Goldman and a job at Bain. And she chose Boston, and I followed her. And I probably would have gone the other way. And in all seriousness, my experience as a leader and as a business person is that I view my home life as a source of competitive advantage. I've been blessed to have a wife who's a partner, and we're a real partnership. I've been blessed to have 4 kids. I've always felt like this thing we call life balance matters, and I feel like that's made me more effective in the workplace. So you know, this contrast, I hate this paradigm. It's personal life or professional life, because I don't think it has to be that way. It's hard.
So how has it shown up as a competitive advantage? Because you know that lots of young families struggle with that. So how did it end up being a competitive advantage for you?
Well, you think about what do you learn at home, right? What do you learn in a marriage? You learn in a marriage, hopefully, it took me a long time to really learn this, and my wife would say I still haven't, how to really listen and empathize, right? You learn with children, you can't control things. It's like, you ain't the boss. You've got to influence your children. You've got to be prepared for what's unpredictable. You've got to be able to sometimes go with the flow, and other times you've got to inspire them. You've got to integrate emotion and thought. You've got to multitask, right? Working requires multitasking. And so I just feel like some of the, I don't know, humility you learn as a parent and as a spouse can serve you well in the workplace. Certainly, I feel like it served me well.
How have your leadership style changed over the years? Because you said you got to grow up through Bain,
yep.
Which was focused in many cases on advising CEOs on not only their business but their leadership style. Like personally, how are you a different leader today than you were 20 years ago?
Well, I was lucky, Carlos, in that what I learned at Bain was this notion of servant leadership. That the first job of a leader is to serve our customers, to serve our teammates, and to serve the community around. And that notion and that deep belief that that's the best way to win. Serving and winning are not two different things. In fact, the best way you serve is to win. And the role model for me early in my career was Phil Jackson. I just loved Phil Jackson as a leader. Because what Phil Jackson was able to do is
basketball coach, for those of you who are not basketball fans.
Phil Jackson is?
Former Chicago Bulls, LA Lakers, 11 rings, right?
11 rings. 11 rings. Yeah. And he played basketball. But as a coach, he would tell you that most of his players are better than he was at playing. But what he could do is he could get the greatest players in the world, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Steve Kerr, to play together. He got to LA, he could get Shaq and Kobe, 2 guys that hated each other. He could get them to buy into the broader goal, the broader service of winning. And so the notion that the job of a leader is to make the team better, to make everyone around you better, was something that I learned early in my career, and I think it's just built on that over the last 30 years. And I think the best leaders, Ron Johnson is a servant leader, right? When you can tell the people that enjoy, don't think, well, this is all about Ron. Ron's a celebrity, but it's not all about Ron. It's not about Ron's ego. Ron believes deeply in the purpose of the organization, and that's inspiring to his people. And he's in service to that vision and to customers. And I just think good leaders, whether they're entrepreneurs or you're running a big company, that commitment to the broader purpose and making it about us, not about me as the leader, is the right thing. I used to tell my organization that most people look at an organization chart as a triangle, right? A hierarchy. You got everyone, and the CEO is on top. And what I learned was exactly the opposite, a reverse triangle, where the customer is the person on top. They're at the top of the organization chart. And then the teammates, the employees that are touching customers every day, they're at the top of our internal organization chart. Those are our customer support colleagues, some of our support and service engineers. By the way, often not the most glorious jobs, some of the sales teams. And then everyone else in the organization exists to help them help our customers. And the CEO, I'm on the bottom. And my job is to do everything I can to help enable our employees to serve our customers to achieve our purpose.
How did you think about compensation then? If you think about that, make you guys smile a little bit? Bernie didn't tell me to ask that. But how do you think about that, John? I love that. I mean, to me, that comes very alive. I'm running a small company now. We've got 50 people. We've just begun to sell, and I'm thinking really hard about that right now. So, what did that mean for you for compensation? Did that ever shape how you thought about compensation? If we do think about that reverse triangle.
Carlos, I'd say two things. I was fortunate to be in a private organization before coming to eBay. And there, in a private partnership, you can align short-term, long-term. You can align what's good for the customers, good for the employees, and good for the owners, short and long-term. And that we were able to do, I think, quite successfully. In a public company, and in a public company in Silicon Valley, where this intense focus on stock and options and share price and sex and sizzle that goes with it, it's harder. Here's what I learned in the eBay turnaround, and my guess is this is true with you. At the end of the day, talented people are inspired by purpose, and are they having an impact? And do they believe in the organization and people they're a part of? And if that's the way to build real loyalty, you can't build loyalty on money alone. We all know that there's certain startups right now and certain unicorns that are focused on purpose. And you know what? If they got marked down, their equity got marked down 50% in the short term, their people are still going to focus and stay with achieving that purpose and in the belief it's going to work out over the long term. There are others that made it all about the stock, made it all about the stock price, made it all about getting rich. And then, for those companies, when you have a little volatility, you see people leave. And you see different types of people in Silicon Valley. You see people that are always jumping to try to catch the next hot thing. And then you see others that say, I want to find a company that relates to what I connect with, a sense, a purpose and a team and an organization that I believe in. And my experience is those companies, by and large, are the ones that win. Apple being a good example. They are relentlessly focused. You never heard Steve Jobs talk about stock price. You don't hear Tim Cook talk about stock price. They believe in what they're doing. And over time, they become the world's most valuable company. That's almost a derivative impact. The companies that put compensation, I believe, up top, are ones that may win in the short term in some cases, but rarely do they win in the long term.
Talk to me about the most helpful advice, maybe not even the most glamorous or the most expected, but the most helpful advice you got early in your career that you think genuinely made a difference in the level of success you've had.
Oh, God, Carlos, I've been lucky in that I've had so many mentors and friends and others, bosses that have helped me. Two different things come to mind. One was I came out of college, joined Bain, and I wanted a mentor. I decided I needed a mentor. And my image of a mentor was I was going to find someone who was really wise, who was going to take me under their wing. I would sort of be at his or her knees and sort of just absorb all the wisdom and learning they had to give to me, right? My little, kind of almost like my little Buddha-like figure. And my first boss, I idolized. I said, would you be my mentor? And I thought he was the greatest thing in the world. And he said, you know what, John, I got a couple things I'm just going to let you in on a couple secrets. He said, number one, there's no one that's going to care more about your career than you. He said, I like you, but your career is not my responsibility. I'll help you with it. But if you don't take responsibility for your own learning and your own career, no one else is going to. So don't ever assume you can delegate that to someone else. You've got to take ownership of that. You can ask for help. He said, secondly, don't look at me and assume I'm this wise old person that's going to teach you everything. He said, you're trying to take the model you had in school, where you have a teacher in front who's the wise teacher teaching the students. He said, the real world doesn't operate that way. Don't focus on learning a lot from a few people. Focus on learning a little from a lot of people. You can learn certain things from me. You can learn certain things from your peers. You can learn certain things from others. And so my advice to you, John, this is Ralph Judah, he's saying at the time, is go into every interaction looking for what can you learn from that person? What can you learn from this interaction? And never quit learning. And so that commitment to learning and that sense that you can learn from every interaction was an invaluable lesson I learned. And by the way, today I think the best leaders, I think the best entrepreneurs are learning animals, right? You deal with Brian Chesky. I'm fortunate enough to know Brian, and we're mutual mentors. That guy is a learning animal. And I think that's part of the reason he's so successful. So the importance of learning and learning from lots of people. The second piece of advice that just stands out was coming out of business school. I was back at Bain. Things were going well theoretically in my career, but I was racked with anxiety. Racked with anxiety. And
because why?
Well, I discovered it was a fear of failure. Okay. My own internal. I was being told I was doing well, but my internal fear of failure. And I had a boss, Kent Theory, and he used a baseball analogy. So apologies, another sports analogy. Anyone here not know baseball? My apologies if you do. He said, John, here's the problem. You're trying to bat 900.
That's really good.
Yeah. And he said, in school, you got A's, so you got 90% right. And that was great. And you're assuming now you can bat 900 in the work world. But here's the problem. You're now in the major leagues. You used to be in the minor leagues. Now you're in the major leagues. And the pitchers have curveballs and knuckleballs and sliders. And so you're afraid to get in the batter's box because you're afraid you're going to strike out. He said, you know, as best I can tell, the greatest hitter in baseball history, Ted Williams, batted .350. That means for every 10 times he got up at bat, he could strike out 6 times and still be the greatest hitter in baseball history. All you got to do is get a couple of singles, an occasional double, and an occasional home run. He said, if you want to be in the big leagues in business, you got to hit .350. So don't be afraid to get up there and swing. And sometimes you're going to strike out, and you're going to strike out with three people on base in front of a full crowd. But you got to get up there and swing and not be afraid of failing. And I don't know about you, batting, I don't think I even bat .350 leading eBay. I mean, you make more mistakes and you get things right, but hanging in there and having the resilience to get back in and keep swinging it was just an enormously helpful reframing for me. And now to not be afraid to fail.
John, take us, I completely agree with that, and I think about that a lot, not only as a baseball analogy, but even as investors. And you think about the best investors who are fortunate if they get things right 2 out of 10. 3 out of 10 would be epic.
Certainly in VC, that's right.
Yeah. Talk to me about the turnaround of eBay, because prior to that, we had not really seen an internet giant have massive success, struggle meaningfully, and then turn around. So you kind of led the way. You may or may not argue that AOL recently has had a version of a rebound, but really you guys have been a rare bird in terms of I don't want to call you a fallen internet giant that rose again, but one who had meaningfully struggled. If you were back teaching at Stanford Business School, where you went to school, and you were doing a little case study on it, and you wanted to say, here are the things I learned that facilitated this unusual turnaround, what were the things you think that facilitated a turnaround of a fallen internet giant?
Well, the first thing I'll say, and we were talking about derivatives backstage, it always looks easier in hindsight than when you're in the middle of it. I will tell you there wasn't a single day when we were in the middle of that turnaround that I was confident or clear we were going to make it. I had belief, I had commitment, but you never really know. You never really know. So before I can make it, you know, oh, there's this obvious insight. Insight when you're in the middle of it doesn't feel like insight. So one thing early on was something I already mentioned, was actually getting the people that had the commitment to go for it. And there were a lot of people that had been around and had a lot of success at eBay, and they were great people. But they were secretly hoping that the past was going to come back. And it was never going to come back. And so the first thing I had to do was confront reality and label it. So calling it a turnaround. No one wanted to hear that term. Our employees didn't want to hear that term. Our customers didn't want to hear that term. The media didn't want to. The media loved it, but didn't want to hear that term. Investors didn't. But everyone knew it was true. So confronting reality. And if you're in a startup, some of you entrepreneurs, and you got to make a pivot, my advice, don't pussyfoot around it. Label the truth. Confront reality. Label it. That's the first condition for change. Second thing we did is we just changed everything. We changed our user experience, pricing, our policies, changed the organization. I had to replace probably 80 of the top 100 people because we had to find people that were committed to the future and not hoping the past. And then the third thing is we had to make a few bets. And in the midst of all this change, make a few multi-year bets. In our case, it was mobile and PayPal were the two bets. And I think the real story, though, Carlos, of the eBay turnaround was the courage of the people. It was not fun when you were in the middle of it. No one thought at the cocktail party, oh, that must be fun. But we were building something that was meaningful, and the people who were there and are still there believed in the purpose of the organization and believed it was something worth fighting for. By the way, the stock went up 5 times, 500%. So to our earlier point, if you do the right things, over time you'll get fairly rewarded. But the reason they were there and the reason that they had the courage and conviction that they had was they believed in the purpose and they believed it was worth fighting for.
Talk to me about the role of luck in your life. Where has luck shown up in your life, do you think? And I don't ask you that question in a way to force you to be immodest or modest, I guess I should say. But legitimately, if you were analyzing your life, are there places where you say, you know what, kind of luck played a meaningful role here?
You know, absolutely. I just start with how about personal health? I mean, you know, and I try not to take that for granted at any time. How about family? You know, you talked about my wife. I wasn't joking, my real lifelong partner or kids. And so I think the luck I feel most appreciative about is the luck of my life, maybe not so much the luck of my career. I think career, you know, it has stuff, but it's the being blessed with family and friends, and that is something you can partly work at, but also I think there's a high degree of luck. I'll tell you where I've learned the most in this, and it sort of gets to your question, and this was true. Let me ask a question. How many, just think for a moment, think for the moment in the period in your career where you learned the most and grew the most as a person. Just think about, and that you're most proud of. Think of the period of your career you're most proud of in hindsight. Think about a moment or a period in your personal life that in hindsight you're both proud of and you grew as a person. So for how many of you were those periods where things were going really, really well? So for how many of you were the periods of adversity? There were periods of adversity or challenge. Yeah, for me too. This is the weird thing about life. The stuff we're most proud of in hindsight is the stuff that was really hard. It was when adversity was confronting us personally or professionally. It was when we had to learn, we had to grow, we had to build characters where leadership matters. And my experience, Carl, is it's never fun when you're in the middle of it. It was not fun to be in the middle of the eBay turnaround. But we knew we were going after something that was meaningful. And in hindsight, it's something I feel deeply proud of, and I think the whole team that was part of it does. And this is sort of the strange thing. We all wish in our lives, I want to avoid adversity. I wish I was part of something that was going really well. It was going really easy. And in reality, rarely do we look back and say, well, that thing that was really easy or went really well, I'm most proud of. And so I've tried to, on this luck point, there are moments where I feel like, oh God, I feel unlucky. Look at all the adversity I'm confronting right now. And then I just try to remind myself, okay, now's a chance to do something that I'll learn and grow, and I'll feel proud about. Doesn't make it easier, but it just, in a weird way, adversity can be luck if you understand it as a period of learning and a period of growth and an opportunity to respond in a way that, in hindsight, you'll be proud of.
What do you think would have happened to your career if instead of being John Donahoe, you had been Jane Donahoe? How do you think the story would have been similar, different? What would have happened if you'd been Jane Donahoe from New Trier High School?
I feel like it would have been a much tougher path. And I got my first real exposure to this when early in my career, my wife, who was a fellow Stanford Law School grad like you, was working at a law firm, Fenwick & West. And so we were both in professional service firms, both working side by side. And I realized she had a much harder path than I did.
Harder how?
So, for instance, her boss, who was a Dartmouth grad, we were both Dartmouth grads, liked taking everyone out for beers after work. That was when he did his team bonding time. And it was like 6 men lawyers and her. And we had 2 kids at home. And she said, I don't really want to go have beers after work. I want to go home. I got my work done. I'll get more work done tonight if I need to. So all of a sudden, and he viewed that as a negative. That was the bonding time. That's when and she began to see it in some of the assignments she received, or just. Second, her first performance review was a classic feedback on style. And I don't know if any of you have seen the Deb Grenfell analysis. Deb's a professor at Stanford Business School who studied gender bias in the workplace. And what it's shown is that in general, successful male leaders or successful male people in the workplace can be both smart and likable. And there's a general unconscious stereotype that if you're a woman, if you're smart, you must not be likable. Think Hillary Clinton. If you're likable, you must not be smart. And that actually women project that onto other women as much as men project that onto women. And my wife's first review was the classic, you communicate too directly. You're smart, but you communicate too directly. Now, anyone that's seen my wife knows she does communicate very directly to me. but she's far, far more diplomatic, civil, and even-handed than most. But
She's an ambassador.
She went on to be an ambassador. But that just, I think it is. And then the last thing I saw is she didn't have any peers. She didn't have many other. There was not a sense of community of other people she could share that experience. So I do think that it's a responsibility of every organization to, if you want to build a culture of inclusiveness, a culture. And I do believe inclusive cultures win, inclusive teams win, right? That it takes effort. You got to build. We took very seriously at Bain and very seriously at eBay a commitment to making an attractive place for women and people of color, all types, to find an attractive place to come, learn, grow, and stay. And it's hard. It's a harder path.
John, if you could go back, and I hate that our time's running down so quickly, but I will allow, I know there are going to be a couple questions out there, so I will allow a couple questions in just a second. But having the benefit of hindsight, knowing all that you know, if you could go back and choose one thing that you didn't do, but that you think in hindsight you would have really enjoyed doing, what was that? If I gave you a do-over, I gave you a mulligan, how would you take advantage of that? Not that you're a mulligan taking advantage sort of guy.
With my current ability, with my true abilities, or if I had abilities beyond what I had?
I'm going to give you both. I'm going to give you superhero power, and I'm going to give you everyday.
Superhero power is what we're talking about back.
Yeah.
I'd played professional basketball.
Okay.
Except I just couldn't dribble or shoot.
Makes it harder, right?
You know, I think, Carlos, the thing, to be honest, and I've been reflecting, I've had this last year off, and it's been a wonderful period of reflection. And as I look back on my life, I feel really good about, over the long term and the medium term, about having led a life that has purpose and meaning for me. I've tried, I've worked hard, been conscious about it. I'm not sure I allowed myself to love every moment along the way. And I do think there are just certain people that say, you know what, win, lose, rain or shine, I'm going to appreciate today. I'm going to focus on what I'm grateful for, and there's always something to be grateful for. And my sense is you're one of those people. You've got that I could tell that even on the phone and see it in your face. And I just think that you know, when it ties to that adversity point, it's how to be grateful and enjoy it even when it's not easy. And then when the good moments, also enjoy it without Catholic guilt. And so I just think one of my commitments to myself in the next stage of my life is to enjoy each moment and not view that as a bad thing, but actually a good thing.
Take full advantage. All right, couple quick questions. I know we only have a little bit of time. I see a hand over here, and forgive me if I'm not seeing it. I see a couple hands here too. We have about 3 minutes, so I'll ask you to make the questions a little bit short, please.
As someone who is probably a little too young to have reached the turning point, how would you suggest I guess, go out and find it and embrace it? The
turning point of?
I guess my career, or finding where I want to be, that you were talking about earlier.
You know, I just again, my guess is it's not going to be like one light bulb insight, and learn, and consume, and pay attention to what strokes your passion, what evokes something in you that gives you that sense of self-driven inspiration, motivation. Because odds are, when you find that, you're going to be successful, and that's a continuous journey, by the way. It's not like we're at this stage of life, we got it all figured out. It's still a continuous journey, but it's experimentation. Then listen to yourself, and see. Don't listen to what other people say. See what evokes you, and see what you know. Some days you say, today was a hard day, but I actually had fun, or I enjoyed it.
You had 4 children.
Yeah.
You had 4 and I have 3. What advice would you give for millennials? My 3 children are millennials, and they're lucky that Dad had a lot of money to send them to grad school. But before that, even though they were valedictorian, high school, and Phi Beta Kappa, 2 of the 3 were out of work for 6 months and 7 months because they didn't go to a top school like Dartmouth or Stanford. So what advice would you give for millennials who really have it hard today?
Keep the faith. I mean, I think there's actually a polarization going on for millennials. There's probably most of the millennials in this audience have unbelievable opportunity, and there are big swaths of millennials throughout our country, and where the opportunities are less than they've been, and the hope for a better future may feel less than it has in a long, long time. And by the way, I think that's a responsibility we all share, particularly in the technology community where technology can help enable opportunity, I think, in those places. But I know the best hope, or the best advice I can give is keep hope, keep faith, keep working, reach out, ask for help. And then for any of us, when a young millennial asks for help, whenever possible, I try to help, even if it's just being a supportive ear. But
do you have a perspective, John, on, we are in the Valley here where we've seen a real proliferation of startups and accelerators and incubators, whether it be GSVlabs and plug and play or other sort of things. Do you feel more strongly about millennials joining startups and taking that kind of risk versus joining more established companies, if that's a possibility for them, like the eBays of the world?
I'd give the same answer I gave over there. Listen to yourself. Don't listen to what other people tell you. Don't do what other people are doing. And this is not easy, what I'm about to say. Listen to yourself. If you feel called saying, I got to try something, go for it. This is probably the best era and the best environment and the best geography and period in history. It's almost costless to go for it in the long term. On the other hand, if you say, that's not who I am, and I want to join Enjoy, or I want to join eBay and learn and grow in an environment. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer other than listen to yourself and pursue where your insides lead you.
We're going to take one more question, and then I hate to say it, but we're at time 0 here. We're at time 0. Hey, how about a big hand for John Donahoe, folks? Big hand.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.